sedate. Fabulous. Mainly because I'm struggling in the heat to even think about what buttons to press. So um, tonight we're going to share it's actually one of my favorite storytelling techniques, but it's also a hypnosis technique. Um, I just I love it, and um, I said this would be slow pace. I I remember the first time I experienced it. Um, Rather than I'd already knew about them, read about them, and studied it a little bit. But I was at the UK Hypnosis Convention, and a chap who I later trained with, Mike Mandel, he was doing one of the talks, and he structured his whole talk upon what we're going to look at today, as in not teaching it, but actually the whole talk was this technique. And he used it so as we couldn't remember what the talk was. Um, and when we realized that's what he'd done, we all laughed and then realized we couldn't remember what the talk was. Um, so it's a wonderful technique, and it can be used in different ways. You can use it in just general conversational approach again. Um, you can use it. I've used this with clients where you're working with something specific, so you give it a bit of thought in advance and structure it accordingly. Um, so what am I talking about? I've not even told you what I'm talking about. I told you it was going to be slow. Nested loops. Nested loops. Sounds like a breakfast cereal. Um, and it's a way of structuring story so that it naturally holds people's attention. But it also allows us to deliver a message or a suggestion in a way that slips under the conscious radar. It's used in hypnosis, in great speeches, in films, and in really good stand-up comedy. And once you know it, you'll spot it, and you'll start hearing it everywhere. So a nested loop is when you start telling a story, but before you finish it, you start telling another story. And then before you finish that one, you start another. Usually you'll do three. You can do five. Don't need to do more than that though, but three is usually enough. After you've dropped in your suggestion, a little bit of hypnotic whatever, then you close the story. So you finish the stories in reverse order. So a simple way to picture it is imagine you open three boxes. Box A, then inside it, you open box B, and then inside it, you open box C. You drop in your little hypnosis bit, and when you're done, you close box C first, then you close box B, and then you close box A. And the same thing happens with stories. You leave open loops in people's minds, and you close them in the opposite order you open them. This works because the human brain hates unfinished business. It's one of the reasons suggested for why we dream is because even though the symbolism in the dream can be quite abstract related to things that have happened to us, it's a way for our nervous system and our minds to kind of close things that haven't been closed throughout the day. When you start a story, people want to know how it ends. Think of every annoying sequel where they've ended it on the cliffhanger. What happens next? And then you've got to wait till the next year before they close that loop and open a new one up. If you start if you start three and leave them hanging, the mind holds all of them open until they're resolved. So if you use three stories, leave each story hanging, but then we also bleed each one into the other, which we'll get into. That means when you slip an idea or message into the middle story, or once you've opened up the three stories, it bypasses a lot of the usual resistance. Basically, your stories take people into a trance because they're hanging off the first one, hanging off the second one, hanging off the third one. And it can, depending on how you do it, can set up a little bit of confusion as well. and it also triggers our mind's desire to add meaning as well. So we open up the first story, open up the second story, open up the third story, slip in your little suggestion, the message, whatever it is you want to do. Like I said, it bypasses a lot of the usual resistance because consciously you're just following the story, but your unconscious mind is taking in that deeper message. And it also makes the whole thing stick in the memory. Or, and I will tell you how Mike did the memory forget bit. It can also help things not stick in the memory. But it does it because each loop links to the other and we remember the chain as a whole. So the simplest nested loops uses 3 layers. We start with story A, leave it open. Start with story B, leave it open. Start story C, leave it open, then drop in your message. And we close C, close B, close A. Here's the thing. This works best if, say someone's feeling a bit sad and you want to cheer them up. Having 3 stories that carry a message of somebody feeling sad and cheering up will not have the effect you're after. It won't have the effect. It's too related. It's too obvious. So it's better to do this with stories that are not related. They're not deliberately created to be hypnotic. They can literally be totally random stories. If you want to see, I was watching a bit of Billy Connolly the other day, a bit of his live stuff. He layers in story after story and leaves it open and closes it. He was a master at it. So they don't have to be related. They can be totally random. You just need a natural bridge from one to the next. That can either be, for instance, oh, I went for a walk today and I was walking by some water. And that reminds me of this waterfall that we used to go to when I was younger. And we used to go there and we used to paddle in it and swim. And then we'd get out and we'd just lie down by the side of the water there, just looking up at the sky. And it always makes me think about the sky looking down upon us, how the clouds passed and how they chased. So we're using either a single word to link the 2 stories, or that something like that reminds me of, which makes me think about as a link into the next story. But the thing is, again, they can be random stories. So a very, very quick kind of demo, very, very quick. The other day I was fixing my guitar. When I remembered meeting a street musician in York. And whilst I was talking to him, it made me think about the time I got caught in a thunderstorm in France. And that was like when I sat quietly in my kitchen just watching the rain. I realized how much we rushed through life without letting moments sink in. And eventually the rain eased and I walked back into the village in France. And later the musician in York packed up his guitar and smiled. And back home, I finished fixing mine. What I didn't do there is that's you wouldn't deliver it quite like that, but that's just to give you the structure. So first story, I'm fixing my guitar. Second story, talking to someone in York. Third story, France. Actually, I've probably put too many in there. Doesn't matter. Um, and then also the kitchen watching the rain. Um, and then we've got the suggestion bit. I realized how much we rush through life without letting moments sink in. So that's the message. That's that bit there. You could be more direct. Quite often, it's good to have a key in your third story, have a key figure, somebody who's almost like an authority figure, because then you can put words into their mouth. So it could be the other day I was fixing my old guitar when I remember meeting a street musician in York. And whilst I was in York, I remember just talking to a gentleman whose name was Stephen. And of course, that made me think of Stephen Cottrell, who's the Archbishop of York, and he once said, "You'll really get this and be very good at it." And anyway, I finished talking to the guy in the street, and so on and so forth. And when you do it, you can feel how the mind kind of wants to carry on with the stories. So what we're going to do, we're going to break down the practice in this. And where are we? I'm going to create a breakout room. I'm actually just going to stick you all in a room together. So you can do this without me watching. And then what I ask you to do is, for the first time through, I want you to literally just tell one short story. Something, it can be anything like, do you know what? Even though it's really hot, I went shopping earlier on today and I saw somebody, blah, 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 or whatever. It doesn't, it can be something like that. It can be something a little bit more kind of whatever. You could, if you wanted to, research stories and have a whole catalogue, but our lives are full of stories. So why bother? You know, um, it was Farmer Phil's festival last weekend. And I remember being at Farmer Fields the one year in the cabaret tent, and they'd moved it up onto the new field. And I was midway through my show, and one of the crew came up and said, "Rob, is there any chance we could turn the PA off?" So I was like, "Yeah, no worries." It was, able to project, so that's not a problem. So I carried on with the show minus the PA. 10 minutes later, they come back in. I'm getting towards the end of the show, and they hey, Rob, don't panic anyone, but we need to evacuate the tent. And the reason they needed to evacuate the tent was because right behind it was the dam that supplied the farm, and it had started to leak. So I very quietly spoke to everyone and said, "Look, we're going to just finish the show off outside." And as we went to Rhyl one day to go to the swimming, the Sun Centre place there and go swimming, and I hadn't realised that they'd built a new one. And went to what was the old one, thought it was all closed up. So left and carried on down to Llandudno, where there's a chippy there, and it does like a whale-sized fish and chips, real kind of whale. And I remember seeing a whale once when I was living. They were sighted, killer whales, orca off. We said about it earlier on, Newquay. And I remember being down on the harbour there and chatting to that's the marine experts that they have surveying and watching and logging everything that's spotted. And I said to them, I think I saw an orca further up the coast when I was walking. Is that a possibility? And they said, yeah, everything is possible if you really put your mind to it. So anyway, they pointed out a few other things that had been shown to me, which was really, really, really wonderful. And as I finished up there, the fish and chips had been amazing. I just couldn't have. Oh, it was so good, so good. I couldn't have had more though. So by the time I finished that, I was kind of quite salty, so I had a drink of water, and water continued to run through this tent where we'd evacuated, and I finished the show up on the bank as this river appeared and ran all the way down out into the festival field. There you go. What was the suggestion in that? Try to remember. So you're on mute, but if anyone can kind of remember what what was the suggestion in there?
I did hear it. I should have written it down. It's gone now.
But it's gone, you see?
Yeah.
And you can literally do,
Because I smiled. I thought, oh yeah, there it is.
there it is,
It's
but
yeah.
then it's yeah,
Something to do about life, something about
yeah.
things in life being
But
possible
that's
or
the
something like
beauty
that.
of this is
Yeah.
is like you can chat to somebody, jump between three stories, leave them each one open, and drop in a kind of You can feel better after this, can you not? And then carry on closing the stories, and they won't, if you've done it really well, they won't even register that suggestion. You can, if you wanted to, depending on how you're working, do a little bit more of a hypnotic thing in there as far as the language goes. But for practicing it, um, this is enough. And if there was a time when I was doing Thought for a Walk during lockdown and everything, where you having to think of something new for every day. And I was doing Mike's training at the time as well, and we got to nested loops, and I was like, every day I go out and I chat to people for 5 minutes. So there's a period of time where for about 2 weeks, every chat was a sequence of stories with the nested loops and the suggestion in the middle bit. Um, so you can practice them quite easily. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you off into a breakout room, and all I want you to do first of all is take in turns telling just one story, something simple. Like I say, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be amusing. It can be an anecdotal type thing, or it can just be, you know, so if you can't think of a story, I sat down and I watched EastEnders the other day, and do you know what? I can't believe that characters back in is still another story. There's so many things you can pick from. You can go, I went to the movies the other day and watched such and such. And do you know what? That film's amazing. I can't believe how intense it was, and blah, 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 is another way. And talk about intense when we were camping the other week. Uh, you see, you could just go into it from that as well. So first of all, just each of you tell, it doesn't have to be long, just um, that first story, just to get used to sharing it. Um, right, I'm going to do the breakout rooms. Where's the thing gone? There it is. There we go. I've never done one like this. Um, once you've done once you've all had a go at your story, the first bit, just leave the room and come back to this room. That's the easiest way of doing it. There we go. See you in a tick.